بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
O Muslims, when our Prophet ﷺ sacrificed so much for us, spilt his blood for us, spent his nights making dua for us, will be on sujood on the day of Judgment making shafa' for us. That Prophet ﷺ that told us that every Nabi gets a dua that is surely accepted. Yani all of the Anbiya, they make dua for many things. Some of their dua is accepted, some is not. But every Nabi gets one dua that is for sure accepted. Some of the Anbiya use that dua against their ummah. When their ummah would go into shirk and kufr and things, and we look at Nuh alayhi salam, and you look at Lut alayhi salam, and you look at some of the Anbiya, they made that dua against their own ummah. Now, imagine, brothers and sisters, children and adults, just imagine, really, if you had one dua that was for sure accepted, one dua that 100% Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guaranteed you will be accepted, what would you make dua for? Jannah. Maybe worldly things. Some brother will make dua for a pious wife. Some sister will make dua for a pious husband. Good things. Somebody will make dua for a lot of rizq. Somebody will make dua for Jannah, which is a beautiful dua. But all of that is for yourself. Right? Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was given that dua that for sure is accepted. He saved it for the day of judgment. For who? For us. For this ummah. He saved that dua. He didn't make it for himself or his parents or his children or his wives. He saved it for the ummah to make dua for us on the day of judgment. So that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that did all this for us, has this love for us, today we don't even know about his life, about his appearance, about his akhlaq. Other than, my grandmother told me when we used to go to bed, it was like this. My neighbor told me it was like this. I heard a video like this. Some shaykh said this. But where is the sahih from the da'if understanding what is established from what is not? So in that today, we have a mukhtasir, yani a very, very brief. Wallahi, if we spend months and years studying just the Shumail, the appearance and characteristics and akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we would not fulfill the haqq of studying the subject. But today is a muqaddimah, an introduction to learn a little bit. And I hope that this will inspire the brothers and sisters here to study the seerah. So we hope that this halaqah will inspire you to then study the seerah more in depth and develop that love for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When we speak about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I will begin with the surah, yani the outer appearance of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now we find many shuyukh will say he looked like this sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or he looked like that. But we want to mention from the sahih ahadith, from the authentic ahadith, not just from this book or this sheikh or that sheikh, no. When we find a hadith of Barra bin Azib radiyallahu anhu, which is muttafaqun alayh, yani reported by al-Bukhari and Muslim, the strongest form of ahadith. We find al-Barra radiyallahu anhu, he said, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أحسن الناس وجها وأحسنه خلقا. What did he say? That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was the best in appearance from his face. Yani his face was the most handsome of faces amongst men. And his akhlaq was the best of akhlaq amongst men. He was not tawil, he was not very tall, and he was not very short. Yani subhanallah, a perfect moderation. Now what is very important about this hadith is that not only does it describe his handsomeness in his appearance, but it is matched by his handsomeness in his akhlaq. And that's very important. Because somebody could be beautiful in their looks, or a man handsome in the way he seems. But when their inside is filthy, when their akhlaq are rude, when their speaking is harsh, when their dealings are bad, then that handsomeness does nothing. After a while, a person won't even notice their looks. They will only realize how is their inner self. Al-Barra radiallahu anhu, he was asked, سئل أكان وجه النبي عليه الصلاة صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل سيف.
Sorry guys, that is gonna work.
This is for us to ponder in the time. Dramatic pause.
My apology for that.
Jazakallah khair. Some topak does the khair. Barra radiyallahu anhu, he was asked, أكان وجه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مثل السيف؟ فقال لا بل مثل القمر. When Barra radiyallahu anhu was asked, was the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam like a sword? What does that mean, like a sword? Yani a face that is thin. A face that is thin would be like a sword. So he radiyallahu anhu said, no, the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was like al-qamar, like the moon. And what does that tell us? That the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was roundish. It was not a thin face. Here, when we say the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was like al-qamar, I want to mention a hadith reported by Imam al-Tirmidhi in his Jami', al-Darimi, Imam al-Hakim in his Mustadrak, al-Nisa'i, and al-Tirmidhi graded as Hasan. And this is the hadith of Jabir radiyallahu anhu. You've seen some of the videos they reported from Anas, but it is a mistake. It's reported by Jabir radiyallahu anhu. He said, paying attention to the hadith, the Hasan, reliable hadith. He said, I went out in the middle of the night and I saw the full moon on a clear night. Now think about this. Brothers and sisters, pay attention. In the desert, where you are not distracted by buildings and lights and things, when you go out in the night and there are no clouds and the moon is full, it's a beautiful sight. And the Arab, they would, in their ash'ar, in their poetry, when they wanted to mention something to be beautiful, they would say kal-kamar, like the moon, even more than the sun. Because when you would look at the sun, it was hard, it burns the eyes. When you look at the moon, it relaxes you. So the Arab, they thought the moon, especially the full moon on a clear night, to be the most beautiful of sights. So Jabir radiallahu anhu, he went out in the desert on a clear night and he saw the moon, and he said, I saw the moon as beautiful. And I thought to myself, what is more beautiful, the full moon or my Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam? He said, at that time, the Rasul alayhi salatu salam, he came out and he was wearing a thobe that was red and black stripes. And I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the light of the moon. And I looked at him and I looked at the moon. And I looked at him again and I looked at the moon. And I looked at him a third time and I looked at the moon, and wallahi, I found him to be more handsome than the full moon. This was the beauty of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When Aisha radiyallahu anha, and one of the narrations, Safiya radiyallahu anha, was asked to describe Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, she described as the sun when it is rising. Why? When the sun is hot and high, it's harsh. But when it's first rising, if anybody's gone to like the beach or a horizon and you see it rising, it's beautiful. The light fills up the sky. In the sharh of this hadith, Ibn Rajab brings a narration from Aisha radiyallahu anha, who says, wallahi, at night I lost my needle. I lost my needle. and I couldn't find it. So I asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when there was no light in the room, just from him looking, from the nur that came from him, I found my needle. When we talk about the appearance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the most authoritative and descriptive hadith is the hadith of Ma'bad. Ma'bad was a Sahabiya. When she narrated this hadith, she was not a Muslimah. Yani she became Muslim afterwards. So she narrates this while still being a mushrika. So we do not just narrate narrations that have ghulu like the Sahaba just because they love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, even a mushrika, look how she will describe Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This hadith is reported by Tabrani and Imam al-Hakim, who graded it to be sahih. Imam al-Dhahabi in his Takhrij also graded it to be sahih. Ma'bad, she says, رَأَيْتُ رَجَلًا, I saw that man from al-Quraysh. طاهر وداعه. What does that mean? The first thing she mentions about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first thing, that his cleanliness was apparent. Yani when you saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from afar, you knew this was a clean man. And I want to make a protest, I guess you could say. And I know we're all Muslims here, but maybe some non-Muslim is going to watch this video. Those kuffar who try to draw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who try to depict Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I say they do nothing but try to lie and harm. Why? Because they never go back to the historic evidence to even try to make something accurate. There is no, historic truthfulness to it. The Muslims, we don't draw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First and foremost, as Imam al-Qurtubi, he says why? When he was asked, why can you not make a picture of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The first thing Imam al-Qurtubi says, where is the qalam? Where is the pen that could draw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That could capture the beauty of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the handsomeness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And secondly, our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbid us from this. Why? Not to go into shirk and bid'at, not to go into exaggeration. But these ahadith, they preserve for us the appearance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the first thing, his cleanliness was apparent. Then she said, أبلج الوجه. Ablaj, يعني a radiant face. A face that even a mushrika, even somebody who was not Muslim could see and see the light, see the nur on it. Then she says, Hasan al-Khalq. Yani in his disposition, he was handsome. And she will explain this, and it is explained in many other ahadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was neither too tall nor too short. He was neither extremely white nor was he extremely dark. He wasn't very skinny and he wasn't overweight. Everything in balance, in perfection, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him. She says about him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that he did not have a protruding stomach. His stomach did not stick out. Nor was he very skinny. Yani, he was in a perfect balance. Wasim Qasim. Wasim yani he was handsome. Qasim yani everything in the right proportion. وفي عينه دعج. ما هو دعج? She says in his eyes was a contrast. The ulama in their shuruh, they said, what does that mean? Imam al-Dhahabi explains that the eyes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the white was very white, and the black pupil was very black. Yani the eyes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the pupil was extremely black, and the eyeball was extremely white. In some of the other ahadith, not in the hadith of Ma'bad, we find that some of the Sahaba said there was redness in the eyes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yani when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to cry, when his eyes would fill up with tears, the redness would come. But otherwise, the pupil was very white, the eyeball was very white, and the pupil was very black. She explained about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that his eyelashes were very long. He had long eyelashes. And she said that in his sawt, in his voice, was a natural echo. It would have a crackle, where when he would speak, you would think that there is an echo even when there wasn't. And she said about his neck, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that it was long. Not extremely long, but it was a longer neck. And she said about his beard, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that it was long, that he had a full beard. Other ahadith mention halfway to his chest. And this is a lesson for our sisters to understand what handsomeness is. Don't wait to see what the Calvin Klein models wear or dress like to think what is handsome. When we look at the most handsome man in the history of mankind, Yusuf alayhi salam, we know from a hadith that all of the Anbiya, they had beards, so we know that he had a beard. When we look at Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, our example, our qudwa, he used to have a full beard. And he was known that his beard was well groomed and long. It was not one of those, just forgot to shave today beards. When we look at the continuation of the hadith, she said about the eyebrows of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they were naturally arching and connected. They were naturally arching and connected, not plucked. It's haram for women to pluck the eyebrows. Now we see, na'udhu billah, even brothers going down that path. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his eyebrows were naturally arched. She mentions them to be connected. But there are other ahadith that mention that there was no hair between the eyebrows of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Looking at these ahadith, what we can find is that the eyebrows connected but not with a lot of hair. Where you would look at it, you wouldn't notice a lot of hair, but there was closeness between them. When she spoke about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she said, "In sama'at fa'alayhi waqar." If he was quiet, there was an awe about him. Yani he sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't just talk without reason. Some people, they just always talk. Every time they're just talking, they don't think about what they're saying, or whether there's importance to it, or whether they are saying right or wrong, they just blab. But he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not do that. If he didn't have something important to say, he would be quiet, and when he was quiet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was an awe to him being quiet. And when he spoke, he would stand out. Yani when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would speak, he wouldn't mumble. Some people are go. What are you saying? When he would speak, he would be clear. In other ahadith we find that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would repeat what he said. Today sometimes in the khutb, when we repeat something, people think we forgot. They're like, you already said that. Like, I know, but you didn't understand it. And that's why sometimes we repeat things. And this is what we heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's example. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he thought people understood, he would continue. If he thought they didn't understand, he would repeat up to 3 times. He would repeat something thrice to make sure the person understood. She continued and said that when he was in a jama'ah, أحسنه أجمله من قريب. Yani, if you saw him from afar, he would stick out. And when he was close, he was the most handsome and the best of those that would be in a group. And when he spoke, he made sense. Yani, he would explain things clearly. And she said about him that he was not so tall that it would be hard to look at him. You know, somebody's very tall and you have to strain to look at somebody. Nor was he so short that it was hard to look down at him. But he was at that medium length where it was easy to see him. And then she said that if he spoke, subhanallah, pay attention to this, that when he sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke, it would be as if a necklace is cut and the beads are dropping all in perfection, one after the other. Those who study balagha, study her balagha. How baligh was this kalam? How beautifully she gave an example. You know, when you have a necklace with pearls in it that easily fall off and it cuts, you see all the pearls, they fall in unison. They fall one after the other in perfect tartib. And it's not like some fall and some are stuck, or they all fall at once. No, they come out beautifully, one after the other, perfectly timed. So she said that was how the speech of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was. Everything in perfection, said in a perfect order. When she explained about him, she said, رَبْعَهُ, يعني everything was to a moderation. Everything about him sallallahu alayhi wasallam was to moderation. In other ahadith, when we see about the color of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was not extremely pale or white, nor was he extremely dark, but there was some redness to him sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he was in the middle of that. And his hair sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not extremely straight, nor was it extremely curly, but it had waves. It was in the middle of that. And his hair was black, an extreme black. And we find that the different anbiya came with different shades. We don't say that this is the perfect color or perfect hair, because every Nabi was sent to their nation in the way that they should receive him. That's why we find some of the Anbiya, they were very light in their color. And some of them, like Musa alayhi salatu salam, was darker in his color. Some of them, their hair, like Isa alayhi salam, was very curly and black. And some of their hair was lighter. Because a Nabi was sent to every nation. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he's with his ashab, pay attention to this. Many of the du'at, when they mention this hadith, they skip this end part. But it's very important. Because I know, I hope the sisters are listening, that when I speak about the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every sister when she goes home tonight, she will go to her husband, beginning with my wife first, and tell me, what about your akhlaq? So pay attention. Because here Ma'bad radiyallahu anha describes those that were around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I'm giving this out to the brothers, that when your wife tells you that, tell her, become like Aisha, I will become like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She says that those that were around her, around him, يعني around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, له رفقاء, يعني they were his companions, يحفظون به, يعني they were surrounding him, protecting him, attentive to him. The Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, in Amara, if he ordered something, they would obey it. And they would hasten to obey the order of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanallah. Imagine how we are with our shuyukh today. How are we with our parents? How are we with our husbands, those that are in authority? When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave an order to the Sahaba, not only did they obey it, they would compete with each other to obey it faster. They would compete. Imagine for our children today, if your mother or your father tells you to do something, do you compete to do it faster and do it better? Or do you think, oh man, I've already done it, why don't you do it? This is how the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum were with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. She says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was well served and attentive to. Yani the Sahaba were always at the service of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. La abis. They were not frowning. Wala mufanaddir. And they were not those that were upset about what they were doing. They were not frowning and they were not upset. They were hastening to obey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, and this is the end of the hadith of Ma'bad. Ibn al-Qayyim in his book Za'ad al-Ma'ad, he describes the dress of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam dress? فقال لابن القيم في زاد المعاد على رأسه عمامة. Upon his head would be the imama, the turban. And that's why we say that from the dress that was the adat of the Arab was the imama, was the tradition of the Arab. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he chose the imama and preferred it over other things. And that is why when Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, as Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani mentioned in Fath al-Bari, and I wrote a small risala or a book on this, you can find the references in it. Al-Imama fi Du'a al-Quran wa Sunnah wa Fahm Salaf al-Ummah. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, when he was asked about the imama, whether it was just from adat or sunnah, he said, bal huwa sunnah. And the dalil for this you can see from the hadith of Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu, when he tied the imama without a tail, without leaving anything hanging. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbid this. He took this off and retied it, leaving something hanging in the back. And he said, هذا أحسن وأعرب. This is better and more visible or clearer. So from this ikhtiyar we say the imama, if you wear it with the niyyah of following Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is from the sunnah where there will be thawab. The imama of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first thing, what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not allow, as Ibn Qudama has mentioned in Al-Mughni, is to tie the imama without leaving either a tail in the back, yani something hanging in the back, or bringing it from the front. That type of imama, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentions in Ahkam Ahlul Dhimma, this is the amaim of Ahlul Dhimma. And Ata, the great tabi'i, Ata and Ta'us, the great tabi'i, they said, when they saw such an imama without the tail in the back or front, they said, Tilka amaim al-shaytan. This is the amaim of shaitan. And I don't care if Azhar or whoever wears them today, or the Rafidah and things, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't allow it, and if the Tabi'een and others clarified that this hukam, we give the hukam without fear. The imam of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the miqdar of it, how long was it? As Suyuti mentions, we have no sahih ahadith on it. We don't know. Some people said these many cubits and these many. There is no hadith that is thabit on it. What we know is that sometimes the imama of Rasulullah ﷺ used to leave one tail in the back between his shoulders. Like at Fath of Mecca. He wore the black imama and he left it between the shoulders. And sometimes in the front. And sometimes two, one in the back and one in the front. And sometimes he would bring it from under his chin, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and tie it up top so it would go underneath. And this is from the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For the color of the imama, what we know from Sahih Ahadith is the color black. From Bukhari and Muslim. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wore the black imama. No doubt on this. Then there is a yellowish color that is also mentioned in Sahih Ahadith. And then we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tied a white imama on the head of Abdurrahman bin Auf. So this also becomes from the sunnah. These three colors. Black, a yellowish, and a white imama. The green imama is not in the sunnah. I challenge anybody to bring me a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wearing a green imama. There are some da'if ahadith about malaika and maybe their authenticity can be checked, but not Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to wear qalansua. Qalansua was what we call today the topay, or we say kufi or whatever, the cap underneath. We know this to be from the sunnah. Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned that sometimes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would wear it underneath the imamah, and sometimes he would wear the imamah without it. Lahu qamis. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to wear the qamis. The qamis today, what we would call a thawb. But when we talk about the qamis of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is not quite like what we see today. We know that it was loose, it was not tight, like what we see sometimes today, very tight thiyab, where you can barely walk or run in it. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to fight jihad in it. But we also know that it used to be short, it was not long. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam would forbid the qamis to go underneath the ankles. When he saw somebody with a thiyab going under the ankles, he would tell them that these will be in the fire. So this is something we know about the qamis of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We also know from the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha that that was his favorite clothing. Because another clothing he would wear is the izar and the rida. The rida and izar is what now we wear in ihram. When you go for Hajj or Umrah, when you see the two pieces of cloth, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would wear that regularly. That's why some of the brothers that push this issue too much, when they're like sunnah, clothing, sometimes I wonder why they don't wear the rida and the izar regularly. Like regularly go to the marketplace with it. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wore it. So don't put everything in its place. Don't get carried away. Otherwise, let's see your ikhlas, wear some izar and rida regularly and walk around in it. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as mentioned in the Sahih Hadith, sometimes he would wear the green cloth as in Somali they say mawis, the izar, the lung, and he would wear this, and he would wear the rida on top, and he would wear this regularly as we wear today in ihram. But his favorite dress was not that. As Aisha radiyallahu anha says, that what he loved to wear was the qamis, which would be the cloth on top of the izar. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam wore the izar, but he also has purchased, and as Ibn al-Qayyim says, this proves that he wore the silwar as well. The pants, the loose pants that we see, silwar. Also Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have a jubbah. A jubbah, in what we find from the ahadith, was a bigger cloth on top of the thawb that he would wear on top. Kind of what we see without the fanciness as a mishlah in Saudi. Is a bigger cloth that was open from the front that would be worn on top of the thawb. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to dress well. He had a special thawb that he would wear for Jummah and Eid, and it was an expensive thawb. But sometimes he would wear clothes that were ripped, and he would have them stitched out of necessity when he had given for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've spoken about the appearance, but the most important thing that I want to speak about today is the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And I will begin with something that would be enough if we understood it. فقال سبحانه وتعالى وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says? And verily you are upon, no doubt, the lam again for tawqeed, upon a great khuluq, great akhlaq. The mannerisms of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam were called azim in the Quran. What more do we need from that? And that is when Aisha radiyallahu anha was asked about the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, she simply said that his akhlaq were the Quran. Yani every good characteristics you can find in the Quran, that was the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We find the hadith, and I'm going to just mention a very few ahadith, but pay attention, brothers and sisters. In Al-Bukhari and Muslim, muttafaqun alayh. In Al-Bukhari, hadith number 5691. In Muslim, hadith number 2309. عن أنس رضي الله عنه. أنس رضي الله عنه reports قال خدمت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم 10 سنين فما قال لي أف. Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu says that I served Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam for 10 years. And in 10 years he never said the word uff. Ibn al-Qayyim mentions that uff is the lightest term of displeasure in the Arabic language. Today, when we get mad at our children, what do we say? Beekh deuza. Subhanallah, we curse our children. We use bad words on our children. Sometimes we say, the kafir bachiya. Make takfir on ourselves. We use these terms. How quick are we to curse our children? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in 10 years, he never even said, uff. Now, before I go on, I'm not claiming that I am upon this. I'm working on it. That's why I'm speaking. Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, he continues, he says, when I did something, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never asked me, why did you do this? And when I didn't do something, he never asked me, why didn't you do this? In fact, in another hadith, he mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told me to go do something. He told me to go do something. I went out and I got busy playing with kids. He was a young boy. He saw children playing, he got busy, he totally forgot. He says, after a long time, I was playing. After a long time, I felt a hand calmly, gently rub my neck. Yani, put with love. And I turned around, I saw it was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he asked me, what happened to what I told you? Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, he says, I became afraid. Because I was supposed to do this action and I totally forgot. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did he do? No. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiled. And he let him play. In another narration he told him, when you're done, then don't forget my amr. Subhanallah. Look at the beautiful akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Aisha radiyallahu anha, in the Sahih Hadith, she says that the hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was never raised upon any of the children or khudama, those that served him, or on any of his wives. Never raised his hand on his wife. How many of us brothers can say that today? That we've never raised our hand on our children or our women. Never. In his entire life. Even in a hadith where Aisha radhiyallahu anha, one time she was upset and she was breaking dishes, and on the other side of the curtain there is a Sahaba. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiled and told the Sahaba, your mother is upset. May Allah give me that patience. We look at the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a Bedouin he came, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a shawl, or we say sadar, on his body. And this Bedouin, he had no right, but he came and he says, "O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, give me from what Allah has given you." And he grabbed the shawl of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he pulled it so harshly that it made a mark on the blessed body of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, their hands went to their swords. Their hands went to their swords. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, stop. What we know, as Ibn Hajar says, that this Badawi was not even a Muslim. At this time, he was not a Muslim. He went and he told him, give me from what Allah gave you. Why? If somebody came to me, I'd tell you, why? Why should I give you? If Allah gave it to me, why do I need to give you? But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, out of his akhlaq, he took him to the house. He told him, take whatever you want. The Badawi he took, he didn't go, okay, jazakallah khair. No, he took. He told him, take more. He took. He said, told him, take more. He took. Then he told him, let me ask you for something. What did he ask him for? He told him, go outside and say some kind words so that my ashab, my companions, don't have anything in their heart against you. Subhanallah. He is concerned about this person and the people not disliking him. The body, he went out, he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. In another hadith, also in Al-Bukhari, where the Arabi, the Bedouin, he came and he urinated in the masjid. You all know the hadith, I know. But imagine today somebody walks in and urinates in this masjid right now. I will be the first one to jump on this person. And inshallah, the Tullab ilm here will follow me. The Sahaba were the same way, they jumped up. Now imagine, this is the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not just a regular masjid. The Sahaba, they jumped up. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, stop, let him finish. When he finished, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lovingly explained to him that this is not what the masajid are for. This Arabi, he saw this, and he saw the Sahaba angry. He made dua. He says, oh Allah, have mercy upon me and upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on nobody else. Bedouins were rough people, you know. He said, oh Allah, have mercy on me and on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and nobody else. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiled and told him, you have restricted something that is vast. The mercy of Allah is wasi'. Don't restrict it to just me and you. Today we have brothers like that. Me and 2-3 brothers, they're the only people who know the haqq. Everybody else is dal model. The hidayah is not just for you. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he taught us the best of akhlaq. And he told us that the best of you are those that are the best towards your women. Brothers, this is a warning for us that a part of our iman, a part of our religiousness is that we are the best towards our wives, the best towards our children. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he did not even tolerate harshness to animals. When he saw the Sahaba, as in Al-Bukhari, when they saw the ant hills of ants, and they lit fires to burn the ants, to get rid of them, he told them that nobody can punish with fire except the Rabb of an-nar, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as in the Sahih Hadith, when he came out and he saw that the Sahaba had taken a bird, its children, its chicks, and he saw the bird frantically running around, he told them, who did this? Return the children to this bird. He was considerate about a bird. When he saw the Sahaba putting a lot of load on a camel, he would tell them, be fear Allah with regard to these animals and don't overburden them. When he saw a Sahabi sharpening the knife before making dhabha of an animal that could see this, he told him, do you want to kill it twice? Hide the knife, don't let that animal know. Today, in this hypocritical society, in the West, when they talk about human rights and animal rights, but then you go up to the slaughterhouses and you see how they slaughter these animals, how they break them with machines, how they hit them with nail guns and let them suffer. And then they have the audacity to talk about animal rights because they kiss their dogs. Disgusting. But Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they became aware of what it really means through our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who taught us to put our hands on the head of orphans, who taught us how to love the children. When he saw a Bedouin, when he kissed his grandson, and a Bedouin said, we don't kiss the male sons, he told them, what can I do when Allah has taken the mercy out of your hearts? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was making salah. He was making salah. And Hassan, Hussein radiallahu anhuma, they went on his neck. He's in sujood, they're on his neck. Wallahi, today we will take that child and throw them. And then after salah, beat them. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stayed in sujood. He stayed in sujood until they went off. This was the love of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The akhlaq of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this should be a lesson for us. First and foremost, to learn about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you don't have ilm, how will you know? And know what is sahih from da'if, from mawdu'. Not just it came in a book. You have to know what is authentic from weak. And then once we learn to practice, none of us will reach perfection, but we have to try. Just because he set a high bar doesn't mean we don't try. Every one of us should strive to learn and practice. And what I will end with today is, don't take from this lesson a finger to point at others. Don't go home and tell your father, why aren't you like this? Or go home and tell your children, why aren't you like this? Or tell your wife or your husband or your neighbor or your friend or your brother or your sister. Every one of us, weigh yourself against the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And am I reaching that bar? And if I'm not, how can I strive to do that? Jazakumullahu khairan. I will open up to questions and answers, inshallah.
ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا